Hi dear students, a warm welcome to Learn Supplementary from your 9th Standard English book. Supplementary Earthquake written by M.S. Mahadevan. Dear students, let's first learn the meanings for better understanding and move on with the story. A stranger, an unknown person, rickety, poorly made object and likely to collapse. Flavored, tasting, dwelling, living. Accustomed to, used to. Tremors, a slight earthquake. Devastation, destruction. Destroyed, damaged heavily. Rubble, piles of broken stones and bricks. Nightmare, frightening dream. Boulders, big rocks. Haphazardly, in a random manner. Blasting, exploding. Flattened, knocked down. Makeshift camp, temporary camp. Cremation, burial. Babbling, speaking unintelligibly. Doggedly, very determined. Feverishly, unnaturally excited or active. Rugged, rough. Dear children, let us learn this lesson with many subheadings to make our understanding quick and easy. Here we see the author opened the story with a young boy greeting a traveler at early in the morning on the way to his roadside tea shop near Pauri. Actually, Pauri is the headquarters of the district Pauri Garhwal and also the Garhwal division. And Pauri is a hidden treasure because one of the most beautiful and dominating color of fiery orange sunset is seen in Pauri in Uttarakhand state. The climate remains pleasant throughout the year except winters. Now we learn about the young boy who is called to be the narrator. One morning, this young narrator, walking to his tea shop with a can of milk, invited a traveler who looked tired and cold. The traveler resembled to the army officer whom he feels grateful. His tea shop is on the roadside that leads to both the pilgrimage Badrinath temple and the tourist and trekking spot, the Valley of Flowers. Let us see the traveler at his tea shop now. The narrator extended his warm welcome and took the traveler, assuring to prepare him the best cup of tea in all Garhwal division in 10 minutes time. He made the traveler sit comfortably on a shaky or rickety wooden bench, hoping that it would balance his weight. While making tea, he engaged the traveler by his self-introduction. He said that his name is Bridge and he is 17 years old. He opened this humble tea shop 2 years ago with the money he had saved from his earnings. Previously, he had worked in a roadside shop outside Panipat where there was too much of heat, crowd and pollution. He said that he saved most of his earnings and used it to open the shop, and by the grace of God, he gets enough and decent income for his livelihood from this tea shop. Then Bridge offered the traveler a strong, sweet, cardamom flavored tea and started to describe his village and the valley and Himalayas. The earthquake met. Bridge continued to pour out his heart's burden about the earthquake that devastated his ancestors' village named Molti. The narrator recalls his past. 4 years ago, in the month of October, a powerful earthquake shook the valley. Himalayas may look strong, but deep down they are unstable. Though tremors are common in these parts and people are used with the tremors, the earthquake on that particular night was a terrible one. Its effects were even felt in Delhi and Lucknow, which were very far away from Multi. It lasted less than 5 minutes, but that time was enough to destroy 602 villages out of 670 villages and to crush the centuries-old mountains, to reduce the villages to rubble and to snuff out hundreds of lives in the villages. His uncle's house. The narrator, Bridge, says that on that particular night, he was away from his house at Malti. He had gone to Pauri to buy his school books and stayed there at his uncle's house at Pauri. He added that people at Pauri too felt the shake in that particular night, but Pauri withstood the tremor that shook again and again. The next morning, he was among the first one to reach the village accompanied by his uncle. Dear children, let's now read about his house at Malti. The narrator, Bridge, says that their house was a 2-storied stone building with a slate roof which was built by his great-grandfather. There were 3 children. They were cared by his mother as his father died of illness just 14 months ago. Bridge was the eldest son. He had a brother of 10 years old, Neelu, and a sister of 2 years old named Bewley. His grandmother lived with them. When he reached the village, every single house in the village, every wall and roof had been flattened. For about 602 villages were flattened or destroyed that night. Only stones, rubble and dust remained there. Rescue operation. He continued that when the soldiers began to clear the debris, his uncle took him away because he was in a complete daze, almost unconscious to feel anything. Around evening, his uncle called him gently to perform the last rites before sunset. His uncle said, "The soldiers have taken the bodies to the riverbank where they make the cremation." At that time, he recalled the moment he had last seen his family smiling and waving their hands at him at the doorway while he was leaving to Pauri. But not like this, a lifeless bodies. All the other bodies were there, but he couldn't find his sister Bewley there. His uncle told him that the soldiers had not found his sister Bewley. Search operation for his missing sister. His uncle stressed that there was no possibility for his sister to be alive because that area was known for wild animals. But Bridge ran back to the place where his house stood once, and he scrambled around, removing stones, searching for his 2-year-old baby sister. The army officer who had supervised the relief operation noticed the narrator Bridge and said that there was no one alive there. But Bridge was not willing to give up his search. He said all that he wished is to give a proper cremation to his sister. Tears rolled down non-stop from his eyes. Moved by the anguished cry of the boy, the army officer shook his head and turned away. 10 minutes later, the officer came back with 3 soldiers. They started the search with firm determination. They began removing the debris with the spades and crowbars that they had brought. When it was dark, someone brought a few lit Petromax lamps. After 2 hours of search, a soldier who stood in the middle of a small hollow called the others. They cleared the hollow and lifted the door. Bewley, a 2-year-old sister of Bridge, was found alive. It was a miracle. She had been buried under the debris for 116 hours. She had survived the earthquake, the cold nights and the wild animals. Then the soldiers wrapped her in a warm blanket and took her to the makeshift hospital and saved her life. That most courageous, determined and human act of the army officer created an impact on him. The next day, the narrator Bridge went to thank the army officer, but he was gone. Then the narrator and his sister went to live with their uncle. Soon he got a job at a dhaba near Panipat. Bewley stayed back and started going to school, a symbol of love. That day onwards, Bridge was looking for the army officer. He gave a cup of tea to whoever resembled him. Bridge felt indebted to the army officer whom he was not able to thank. A month later, he quit his job and returned to the mountains. Now, he is happy and contented to do a small service of offering tea to the tourists for no money and wishes them a safe journey. Thus, he has become a symbol of love and humanity. That's all with the lesson, children. Shall we summarize the story in few words? Yes. One early morning, the narrator Bridge welcomed a traveler on his way to his roadside shop and offered him the best cup of tea in Garhwal. The narrator engaged the traveler, telling his past story of his village and the devastating earthquake which destroyed 602 villagers within 5 minutes' time. But Bridge was not in his house at that particular night. He was in his uncle's house at Powri. The next morning, Bridge was one among the first who reached Molti. Nothing remained in the village except rubble and debris. Around evening, his uncle took him to perform the last rites for the bodies before the cremation. The narrator found that his sister was missing, so he went back searching for her. Then the army officer with his men found her alive after 2 hours of continuous search. When the narrator went to thank the army officer the next day, he was not there. He was gone elsewhere. So thereafter, the narrator started offering a cup of tea to whoever resembled the army officer as a symbol of gratitude. He feels that he is indebted to the army officer. Thus, he became a symbol of love and humanity. So, dear children, read the lesson repeatedly for better understanding. Study well. Happy learning.